Welcome to today's episode of Quality Time with MoreSteam. This is a pretty special episode because we are celebrating two big milestones. First, this is our 25th episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us along the way. We truly appreciate it. But even more exciting than that, MoreSteam is turning 25 years old. That's right, MoreSteam was founded on February 29, 2000, and although we don't get a leap day this year, we are celebrating in style anyway, all month long here at MoreSteam. Because we have so much going on right now, we're doing something a little bit different on this episode of the podcast. We have 25 years of MoreSteam, the 25th episode of the podcast, so we have collected 25 of the most memorable moments from the show so far, and we have taken those moments and put them in a collection in this episode. Let's dive right in. On our first episode, Peg Pennington, MoreSteam's president, kicked things off with an essential reminder. If people don't feel safe admitting mistakes or sharing ideas, your processes won't improve. Psychological safety isn't just nice to have, it's foundational for building trust and driving change.
This is not about naming, shaming, and blaming people. This is about improving our process because you don't want to gather the team and they don't talk. They feel that, hey, if I really share what happened, that I made a mistake and I'm going to get blamed for that, then your process is never going to get better. So it's really important as a leader that you make people feel psychologically safe so that they can speak up.
Leadership isn't about being stubborn, and Rich Razgaitis made that clear when he explained why refusing to change your mind shows that you're not learning anything new. Instead, as a leader, you need to be adaptable.
Another reason it's hard is because a lot of people just don't want to say, hey, I'm wrong, or I've changed my mind. You should be changing your mind if you're running a company or if you're in a leadership position in business. I mean, if you're not changing your mind, it's basically saying you're not taking any data points in and learning anything along the way, and that you're just being stuck on your perceived rightness.
For 2 episodes, Alan Payne gave us an insider's look at Blockbuster Video and the home video rental industry. By renting new releases for just one day at a time, Alan's stores kept shelves full and customers happy while competitors struggled.
We rented movies for one day at a time. The new releases anyway, not the older movies, but the new releases we rented for one day at a time. And we would charge about the same price as Blockbuster would. Ours were, back in those days, it's probably $3. So we charged $3 a day. They would charge $3 for 3 days. And what we found is that we could stay in stock much, much better than a Blockbuster could on the high demand new releases.
Mistake proofing doesn't have to be complicated. That's what Shawn Washburn showed us with his examples of poka-yoke. Whether it's designing parts that only fit one way or eliminating opportunities for error, small changes can make a big difference.
Poka-yoke's like a really great one because it's basically, can you design an operation or a step in something where it's like almost physically impossible to do it wrong. So if there's some plate that's got 2 holes in it and one hole's closer to the edge than the other one, and it has to go a certain way, can you put a pin underneath so that, you put the hole over the pin, it only fit one way?
Alan Goodman brought an interesting perspective to the show when he said that sometimes long lines can be good for business. They create buzz and signal demand, but as Alan pointed out, if customers feel their time isn't valued, that buzz can quickly turn into frustration.
My theory is always a long line is good in some cases for a new business because it indicates interest and it's good for people to see, like, oh, it's a long line. But it's only good as long as people are willing to stand in it. After a period of time, people are gonna realize that you just don't run an efficient business.
Ken Robinette shared how identifying informal leaders within teams can spark real change. These natural influencers often drive problem-solving energy, and when equipped with the right tools, they can inspire others to follow suit.
It wasn't all 35 people, but 4 or 5 people kind of took an interest in it. And 2 of those people were like the informal leaders. And, at the time, I didn't know this was what's going on. I'm giving you my reverse look perspective. But finding those informal leaders and being able to apply basic concepts of problem solving that they hadn't thought about, and you see that enlightenment or that energy happening in them, and then they pass it on to other folks.
In episode 9, Emmanuel Aouad didn't just talk about Gemba walks, he turned the concept into music. Instead of simply describing the importance of getting out on the floor to see where work happens, Emmanuel wrote and performed a song about it. We played it on the show. We're going to play it again now. Here's Gemba Walk.
Have you done your investigation yet? A Gemba walk is a perfect example of how you gotta see it to believe it. Do not rely on a game of telephone. Now that we're measuring, ask me what's next. The Gemba walk is the one way that you show your respect. There is no substitute, so don't scuff this dude. Get everyone together, you gotta run it through. It's how you see the value for yourself, so y'all can see the process, and now you build a wealth. A knowledge for your team, and now they can really see and understand before talking about shifting means. It seems simple like it's 3AD, and all you gotta do is follow 3 APs. First you gotta go to the actual place and watch the process people do and see the actual waste. What you probably find are the things we assume will be replaced by information probably new. It's how to hold back preconceived notions and stop firefighting like you're going through the motions. If you want to find the actual waste, first you gotta see the actual place. Gemba walk it out, Gemba walk it out. Then regroup with the team, you gotta talk it out. If you want to gain people respect, you gotta see the process, don't you forget. To Gemba walk it out, Gemba walk it out. Check it out, yeah, you gotta talk it out. The most impactful things aren't always the most complex. The Gemba walk is an easy way to gain powerful understanding of a process and its value while showing respect to the people who perform that process. Make sure you don't skip this in your measure phase.
In a very memorable moment, Omar Mora didn't hold back when he talked about waste, or rather his hatred of it. Omar explained why continuous improvement professionals need to develop a visceral dislike for inefficiency and use that energy to drive change. Yes, Omar Mora hates waste.
So you hate the waste. I mean, it has to be that kind of feeling. You don't like waste. You hate waste when you're in continuous improvement. So try to adapt those tools and techniques the better way and be pragmatic in terms of how to use them.
MoreSteam's own Karina Kretz emphasized the importance of finding your North Star metric, the one measurement that guides everything else in an organization. And once you identify it, she said you can start figuring out what drives it and where to focus your efforts.
You want to brainstorm first what different things you might want to be measuring as they relate to whatever North Star main metric that you are trying to measure. So there's probably a whole thread we can go down about picking your main North Star metric, and maybe that's where we're talking about for prioritizing. Once you have that North Star metric, then you have to start looking at, well, what are all the different things that could be driving that North Star metric?
It doesn't matter what you call it. Solving problems is more important than labeling them. And that's what Maria Fry taught us with her concept of Stealth Sigma. By adapting Lean Six Sigma tools without overwhelming teams with jargon, Maria showed how to get results without unnecessary friction.
But then, once you go into an organization, one of the biggest lessons I learned early in my career with doing this as a consultant is that you really have to understand the culture, what they've done before, right? And then what's going to be effective. And sometimes if the technical language is something that, they're not really into, then, we just talk normal talk. And so, I call it Stealth Sigma. It's kind of, the phrase that I turn, it's like, we're just going to go in there and solve that problem. Doesn't matter what we call it, but we're using Lean Six Sigma tools, and then once you solve that problem and get that benefit for them, they're like, how did you do that?
In one episode, we shared a presentation made by MoreSteam's own Ken Robinette. And in that presentation and in that episode, generative AI took center stage when we explored how tools like ChatGPT enhance process improvement efforts. Whether you are ready or not, AI is transforming how we work.
I did this little experiment at the little company I work for. We had done some customer surveys. If you've ever used our products, we often ask for folks to give us a comment when they go through a lean training, or if they touch one of our products. We had this bunch of comments, just random comments from customers, and it came in line by line by line, customer from customer from customer. And I wasn't really worried about the one-off comment from a specific person, so I took the whole data set. I put in a ChatGPT and I said, can you affinitize or group this data for me? And there was probably 1,200, 1,300 individual lines of data that a human could have sat down and tried to figure out. But it went through and it read it and it started grouping them up. So that 1,200 or 1,300 lines of data came out to be 5 key things that we need to do better.
MoreSteam's 2024 Best Practices for Operational Excellence Conference may have been the best one yet. And shortly after the conference ended, I had Peg Pennington on the show to talk about all of the presentations, all of the innovative thinking, all of the strategies for continuous improvement and operational excellence that were on display at that phenomenal conference.
You're so right in terms of thought leadership. So let's just start with 2 thought leaders that we had. The first one, well, 3. We had ASQ and LEI at the conference together. And I don't think that has ever happened. And if you're listening and you don't know, ASQ is the American Society for Quality. They set the standards for people that are taking exams to become certified quality engineers. And then we had Lean Enterprise Institute represented as well. The president, Josh Howell, was in as well as John Shook, who, okay, I feel like I don't have to introduce him, but I will. I mean, he wrote Learning to See, which has been a worldwide bestseller for those practicing in the lean community, as well as Managing to Learn.
You should join us for our next conference in August 2025. It will be tremendous. You should definitely be there. In another episode, Brian Bross, MoreSteam's own Brian Bross, brought lean principles into restaurant kitchens by focusing on efficiency and consistency. He showed how organizing workstations can reduce prep time and keep customers coming back for more.
Some of the biggest challenges that we had to face together in kitchens was really just making sure everybody understood the why. So some of the things that were interesting with the staff, it's like, we weren't using the terminology. I wasn't saying, hey, we're going to 5S this, or very rarely we're even saying mise en place to each other on the line. The idea was we needed to communicate that if you line everything up correctly for our biggest selling items, then the amount of time you have to spend making that biggest selling item is going to be reduced. And if you can make the same thing over and over again consistently, the guest is going to be happy and they're going to come back and get it again. And so there was really the idea of explaining that if you can do it faster and you can do it consistently, and then we can do it better together, then everybody's going to win.
Filmmaking, movie making. It might seem worlds apart from Lean Six Sigma, but my good friend Dino Tripodis found common ground in communication and respect. Whether you're managing a film shoot or leading a team project, starting with clear expectations makes all the difference.
Everybody gets together, morning of the shoot or night shoot, whatever the case might be. You start off with a safety meeting. Everybody gets on the same page. Everybody knows exactly what we're shooting that day. Everybody knows exactly the work that needs to be done. Everybody gets on the same page and you know what you're doing. every step of the way right there. You always start off with a meeting and you always emphasize, again, respect, respect, respect as you go through and make your film. And you try to get your pages in. And we did. You have X amount of pages. 22 days is not a lot of days. To make 11 days is even shorter. But 22 days was very aggressive, a very aggressive shoot.
Kevin Keller broke down statistical process control, also known as SPC, in simple terms. It helps identify variability over time so you can spot trends before they become problems. It's data-driven decision-making at its finest.
In manufacturing, we expect to get the same result each and every time. But we don't. We don't get the same result each and every time. So what SPC does is it says, what's the natural variability of your data over time? And then it says, as long as it's within these sets of limits, it's behaving the way it should behave. If it all of a sudden shifts or trends up or trends down, or you get some unusual observation, then the chances are there is a root cause.
Shingo Prize winner Peter Ward, and what an honor it was to have Peter Ward on the show. Peter highlighted how universities can keep operational excellence programs relevant by staying connected to industry needs.
Turning the Center for Excellence in Manufacturing Management into a more focused operational excellence center, it was really driven by by our members. Their interests, their problems, their understanding of what Lean and Six Sigma and operational excellence more generally could do for them was really what drove that whole move. So I mean, I think that's been important. Well, so the Center for Operational Excellence is always served as a check at our curriculum, to make sure that the curriculum remains relevant.
Right.
And that is so we know what our members tell us, and if the members are telling us things that aren't in sync with what we're teaching, we probably should change what we're teaching.
In this next clip, Meredith Brody shared her team's experiments with cohort sizes in training programs. Meredith found that smaller groups allow for better coaching and deeper learning experiences, proof that sometimes less really is more.
I would have to say one of the biggest things that we have adjusted, and we saw this with participation from our practitioners, is finding that sweet spot for our cohort size. We've experimented with cohort sizes anywhere from 9 to 28 people. However, through experimenting with different cohort sizes, we have found that the max size is about 9 to 12 or 3 to 4 practitioners to one coach. So currently my team is 3 people, including me. So our max cohort size would be 12. Any bigger than that would really dilute the experience for our participants and really would, I think, dilute our coaching of those practitioners.
Last December, we even got into the holiday spirit with a Lean Six Sigma twist on 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, complete with Saint Six Sigma Nick himself. This episode showed that process improvement can be fun, even festive.
When what, to my wondering eyes, should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny lean peers, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Six Sigma Nick. More rapid than tact time his courses they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Kaizen, now Kanban, now Pokeyoke Flow, on 5S, on Value Stream, on Lean Tools we go. To the top of the charts, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all.
When he was a guest on the show, Ryan Weiss told one of my favorite stories about process improvement. I'm going to share that story again with you right now. And as you listen to this great story, I want you to remember 3 things: tools, skills, and mindset.
Teaching Lean Six Sigma, I was teaching the traditional 4-week black belt training. And there was one particular slide that said how to change, or the 3 things need to change.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a triangle, and it said tools, skills, and mindset. So there's 3 things that are required to change: tools, skills, and mindset. And when I would get to that slide, here I was teaching 4 weeks of content, and I would get to this slide and I was like, I guess it's obvious, right? Like, what else are you going to say about the slide? And our twins were about 6 or 7 years old at the time. We made a trip to Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. And my kids were looking at the orangutan enclosure, watching the orangutan. And I was reading a plaque on the wall about an orangutan who was no longer alive at the time, but there's this big plaque on the wall. And it talked about Fu Manchu, the orangutan, and how he kept escaping from the zoo. And the head zookeeper, the lead zookeeper, was all upset as his employees. Why are you being so careless? Why are the orangutans escaping? Why do they keep getting out of the cage? Who's being careless and leaving the doors unlocked? Until one day, one of the junior zookeepers is watching as Fu Manchu goes over to the door, starts fiddling around with the lock. The door pops open, and Fu Manchu and the other orangutans get out and run around the zoo. So it brought me back. So my kids are watching the orangutans, having fun, whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking about a PowerPoint slide. 3 things needed to change: tools, skills, and mindset. And I started thinking about Fu Manchu, and I started thinking about, they sedated him, right? So he gets out of the cage, they sedate him. They're like, how is he getting out? And they found that he had taken a piece of wire from one of the lights overhead, broken it off, used that as a lockpick to get out of the cage. And then
the orangutan is doing this.
The orangutan.
Wow.
So I'm like, I'm the original orangutan. I actually have an orangutan suit in my closet that I use for Halloween or stuff sometimes. I even use it for like a keynote speech sometimes. Right? Like, when we think about this, the orangutan broke off a piece of wire, opened the lock to that door with the piece of wire, and then he hid it from the zookeepers by putting it by his gum line like a retainer.
Wow.
So this is like, people can Google this. You can look up Fu Manchu the orangutan, read about this story. So he had a tool. He needed a tool to get out of the cage. That piece of wire that he took from the light. The second thing he needed was the skills. So I've often shared this story that you could give a key to a zebra. Just imagine for a moment, if you gave a key to a zebra, what would the zebra do with it?
Nothing.
He might sniff it, right? He might look at it, but he's not doing anything with it. You could give him the key to unlock his cage. And the zebra might want to get out of his cage. He might have the tool to get out of his cage, but he doesn't have the skills. So the orangutan, Fu Manchu, had the skills and he had a tool. The third thing, the top of that pyramid, the top of that triangle, was you've got to have the mindset. And when you think about Fu Manchu, if he was happy eating bananas and having someone clean up after him, which is a pretty comfortable life, if he was if he's happy with that, he would never have gotten out of the cage. But he had such a strong mindset that not only did he find the tools, he taught himself to be a locksmith, and he figured out how to get out of the cage. And so I've told this story probably dozens, maybe hundreds plus times over the past 20 plus years of my life. And so I've become known as sort of the orangutan guy, that when you think about continuous improvement, if one of those 3 things is missing, they took away that tool, they took away that piece of wire, and Fu Manchu never escaped again.
To introduce the next clip, I am going to eliminate waste and allow you to move on to the more valuable activity of listening to these incredible insights from Thomas Pater.
One of the things I really appreciated about what you just said was that lean is about moving people on to more valuable activities. How did you come upon that way of thinking? Was that ingrained in you? Did you develop that? Because I don't hear that as often necessarily, but it makes all the sense in the world.
Right. It would be impossible to go through the MBOE program without having that kind of indoctrinated into you. Of course, Peg Pennington, current president of MoreSteam, was a faculty instructor at the MBOE program while I was there. You had visionaries like Gary Butler, who was the executive in residence, Peter Ward. I mean, the list goes on and on. That was back there. I had a wonderful coach at the time, Steve Grand. And these individuals this is really people that really study lean and understand it and where it came from, understand that this idea of people is central to lean, and this idea of moving people to valuable work and giving them a common mission and purpose, that it's actually a failure of us in management when we task people with just simply toil and other sorts of things that are meaningless. We want to connect them to the mission of the company. We want to give them meaningful work to do and challenge them that says that your job is not just to do your job, it's to figure out better ways to do your job every day. And as we're able to get rid of waste and lower value activities inside the organization, that's actually a chance for you to move on to more valuable things and provide greater value to the customers.
I got to say, Tom, that was just fantastic. I can already see myself taking that little bit of audio and making it a reel in and of itself. That was fantastic, Tom. Thank you.
Chris Spranger emphasized mentorship as a cornerstone of Lean Six Sigma training programs. Pairing experienced black belts with green belts helps everyone reflect on their work and become better facilitators in the process.
This is why we link up experienced black belts with inexperienced green belts, because they're facilitating projects. They're going to run into all of this soft stuff, right? That's not in the book. And there's a huge power in, right, getting done with the meeting, debriefing with your black belt, and either being like, wow, that went really well. What's our next step? Or, putting your hand in your face and being like, this was a disaster, right? And like, how did we get there? How could have we kept it on the rails? And just this continual process of reflection and, not getting offended by what happened, right? Sure. But just trying to understand, where that came from and make yourself a better facilitator, of this Lean Six Sigma philosophy. I always tell people, I'm like, if you're in a boat, right, and there's really large crashing waves, we can't get mad at the ocean.
No.
Right? We got to figure out where those waves are coming from. Find that out, right? Let's smooth out this water and then we can cruise along.
In our most recent episode, MoreSteam founder and CEO Bill Hathaway reflected on the unglamorous but essential work behind process improvement. From small fixes to major overhauls, these efforts might not make headlines, but they are what keep organizations running smoothly day after day.
And I maybe just take 1 second. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably involved in process improvement. And so let's just take a minute to celebrate the work that you're doing if you're listening, and the people you work with, and all the unglamorous activities that you're engaged in that are necessary to make the world keep turning.
You recently had a blog in praise of unglamorous activities. Am I right?
You are right. And it's one of my favorite phrases, because it is unglamorous work, but that doesn't mean it's not important. It's not what you're going to see on the Academy Awards. It's not going to be highlighted by anyone in Hollywood. It's oftentimes behind the scenes and all too often not very recognized, but boy, it's important.
It's almost like being an offensive lineman in football. If you know the name of an offensive lineman, it's more often than not because they gave up a sack or had a penalty.
Right. That's a good metaphor. Yeah.
In consecutive episodes, we discussed the joke writing competition at MoreSteam's most recent Best Practices for Operational Excellence conference. At dinner, every table was asked to write a joke about process improvement, continuous improvement, Lean Six Sigma. Generative AI got involved in the joke writing contest, and we talked about it in 2 consecutive episodes. So this is one topic, but it's 2 moments. each table was tasked with writing a joke about continuous improvement, a joke about operational excellence. And then we'd pass around the jokes, grade the jokes, and reward the winner and the loser. Now, some people did use AI to come up with a joke, which meant that 3 tables had the exact same joke, Peg, and I'm going to share that joke. 3 tables came up with this joke. So this is the most popular continuous improvement joke according to AI. What type of control chart do you use for tracking drug testing urine samples? A P chart. So there you go. That is the number 1 continuous improvement joke according to artificial intelligence.
That P chart joke was not great. I don't think generative AI could last 3 minutes at your local open mic. In fact, I asked generative AI the following questions. How funny is generative artificial intelligence? If I ask generative AI to write a joke, how funny will that joke be? And the answer I got was, in part, in summary, while generative AI can produce jokes and even occasionally be funny, it is not yet capable of consistently delivering humor that matches human creativity and emotional depth. And I think that was proven at our conference because the winning joke was not produced with generative AI. It was written by people working together.
Dan, you were wrong about that. Weren't you, Dan? On behalf of generative AI everywhere, I kindly request that you make a correction.
I need to make a correction from our last episode. In the last episode, we talked about the joke writing contest at MoreSteam's Best Practices for Operational Excellence conference. At the dinner reception, each table was asked to work together to write a joke about continuous improvement. Some of the tables used AI to help them write jokes. Other tables did not use AI. I said I would find and share the winning joke, and here it is. Why did the statistician break up with the regression model? Because it had too many significant others, independent variables, and they were all highly correlated. There you go. He also said the winning joke was not produced with generative AI. It was written by people working together. I have since learned that the winning joke was indeed written by generative AI. The prompt was, tell me a joke about multicollinearity. I hope I said that right. Now, I was wrong. The winning joke was written by AI. AI beat people. One thing is for certain, there is no stopping AI. AI will soon be here. And I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords. Hey, it's quality time with MoreSteam. You might hear a reference to Simpson's Paradox or The Simpsons.
And there you have it, some of the greatest moments from the first 25 episodes of Quality Time with MoreSteam. But wait a minute. If you're counting, you may be thinking to yourself, Dan, that's only 24 moments. You promised me 25. I did. And the 25th moment is this short break. MoreSteam's enterprise process improvement platform includes the tools, training, and software you need to transform your organization into a problem-solving powerhouse. Join the ranks of Fortune 500 companies that trust MoreSteam for their enterprise process improvement. Our integrated approach featuring training, project tracking and execution, simulations, and statistical analysis empowers your team to create a culture where structured problem-solving becomes second nature. Visit MoreSteam.com to learn more. And there you have it, a collection of some of the best moments from Quality Time with MoreSteam, 25 moments on our 25th episode for MoreSteam's 25th birthday. And as we celebrate MoreSteam's 25th birthday and the 25th episode of the podcast, I want to thank all of our amazing guests for sharing their knowledge and insights. And I want to thank you, our listeners, for tuning in along the way. Here's to continuing this journey together, this journey of operational excellence, of continuous improvement, of unglamorous activities that keep the world going around. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you in 2 weeks with more Quality Time with MoreSteam. Thanks again.